All right, next up we've got Tennessee, who was the biggest challenger to Georgia last year in the SEC East. The game didn't end up actually being all as close as it was hyped up to be, but this is a really talented team that kind of proved that they're a high level competitor last year. They won a big game at Alabama, and then continued on throughout the season. They ended up dropping kind of a fluky game at the end of the season, but a really really good team. However, a lot of that had to do with kind of some elite quarterback play from Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton came in after an injury from Hooker and looked really good, but that's kind of been the story of his career. He's always looked really good. He's got a big arm. He's a really athletic player, but is he a good enough quarterback to run this Tennessee team the same way that Hendon Hooker did?
Yeah, and I think last year, I mean, if everybody's going to be honest with themselves, we expected the Tennessee to make a jump, but not the jump that they made last year, going into the year. But I think this year they're clearly in that number 2 spot in the SEC East right now as we look to challenge Georgia to make a real run. I mean, that game already has so much hype that you can't get into Neyland right now for like less than almost $200, and the season hasn't even started yet. So if those two teams are undefeated heading into that game, it will be probably has the potential to be one of the best games in college football history. I know that's a big statement, but I think what Tennessee really hinges a lot on is the quarterback play out of Joe Milton good enough to be elite? Does he make that step? He's got a decent amount of reps between Michigan and now at Tennessee, but is he good enough, and does he stay healthy? They have some talent in Nico right behind him, but all reports out of fall camp so far is that Nico is clearly not ready yet, in which to be expected. He just got to school. He's got a lot of growing to do. Supremely talented, right? But that's a tough position to be thrown right into. And I think the next big question mark is they have to replace 2 top receivers out of college football last year.
Yeah, the receiver room is actually, it may sound difficult to do. They lost a couple of big star receivers, especially, their top receiver. Yeah, Jalen Hyatt. But the receiver room is going to look a little bit different this year. One of the kind of number 1 receiver that everyone's expecting to see is Brew McCoy. He got a lot of run last year. He was kind of their big guy on the outside, standing at 6'3", but this guy's a unit. I mean, he's really well built, and he put up some big numbers for them last year. On the other side, they brought in a transfer, Dante Thornton. I mean, this guy from Oregon, he's 6'5". So, I mean, lining up with these 2 guys on the outside is never going to be a bad thing. And even though they did lose Hyatt, they have Ramel Keaton and Squirrel White as kind of some of those shiftier slot guys that I expect to play a big role this year. So even though they did lose a lot, I think they've got a lot of talent in that room and proven talent too with Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton.
And when you look at college football, just if people don't know, like if you have 2 top tier big receivers that you can play out wide, that puts a lot of college defenses in a lot of stress, because there's not a lot of college defenses that have 2 top tier cornerbacks that can really go play on the ladder. Yeah, exactly. So and if you have to give those guys help on the outside, you open up the middle of the field for a one-on-one matchup or for the run game. So having 2 big imposing weapons on the outside is lethal, and if they can take advantage of it. But to do that, you do have to protect. And I think, Tanner, you had some notes on the offensive line. They've got to replace some key pieces as we move into this year.
Yeah, so Darnell Wright was a really high-profile offensive tackle for them, one of the best players coming out into the 2023 draft. Went really high. He's going to be really difficult for them to replace. And this is kind of where I see Tennessee's downfall. I see them kind of slotting in around the same places they did last year. Still a really good season, double-digit wins, 10, 11 wins. I don't think they can get over the hump and beat Georgia this year, and it's that offensive line. I don't know if there's any offensive lines in the country that can match up with Georgia's front 7, but at this point, I don't think Tennessee's ready to do that. I think that's something that Josh Heupel is working on. He brought in two pretty talented transfers, but as of right now, they always say you build your team to beat whoever's on top at the time. And right now, Tennessee's almost there. I just don't think that they're there up front on the offensive end to be able to get what they want against that Georgia defense.
That's the tough part about college football right now, with Georgia being what they are, and being in their division. That's the only way for Tennessee to get out. So yeah, like you said, I think they should be able to make a pretty clean run through a lot of their schedule this year. But that game against Georgia is going to really stress them. I think they do have it being at Neyland gives them a much better chance to potentially to pull off that upset. However, you still got to play the game, right? So
Yeah,
the crowd can
and, and
only do
yeah,
so much. But like I said earlier, if they get to that game with one loss against maybe Alabama or Texas A&M early in the season, and Georgia comes in undefeated, Neyland Stadium is going to be absolutely rocking with like 100,000 plus people. That place gets wild. So it's going to be crazy.